Good morning. Happy Sabbath.
Morning, happy Sabbath.
It is good to hear that song. I want to thank Sister Beryl and Sister Michelle for that song. For we have nothing to fear, for we are never alone. Amen. As we get into the topic later, we'll see the importance of that song and why we should never fear, knowing that God is always with us. Amen. And He made us not to have a spirit of fear. No, so let us not fear. I also want to welcome our brethren and our friends that are watching online. May this be a blessing unto you. I want to also announce to those watching and the brethren here that through our push this week, we were able to reach over 1,600 individuals with our promoting the message that we present here. We present present truth here. We present the three angels message. So we wanted to let those in the surrounding community and throughout the country know what kind of message we present here, and we were able to reach at least 1,600. I know that in the few weeks that we've been presenting the first sermons, we got close to 90 viewers, and the second one is approaching 60. So let us continue to pray for this project, and you at home maybe continue to be blessed by these messages. And for those that are watching, I also want to let you know that it is customary for us here at Science Watchman Free SDA Church to have one health presentation per month. Normally we do it on the first Sabbath of the month. Occasionally we might do it on a different Sabbath, but we try as much as possible to do it on the first Sabbath of the month. So if you're a faithful person who tunes into our program, you can look for us, and you can look for the health message every first Sabbath of the month here through this online channel, through YouTube. So with that, let us move into the presentation this morning. We read in Psalm 134:14, for we know that the health message, it is indeed a spiritual matter. It's not only a health matter, but more than that, a spiritual matter that we need to be well educated on and aware of. Psalms 139:14, the psalmist tells us, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So as properly as the psalmist said, we are wonderfully made. So therefore we must take care of this wonderful creation that the Lord has created and made. And as we read this morning in the Bible reading, beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. So not only should our soul prosper, but also in health we should prosper. For if we are truly children of God, and present truth believers, and believers of the Advent faith, our health should also prosper. And not only that, but from biblical times we were admonished, and the apostle told us that it was his wish that we may prosper in health. Continuing in the word, because oftentimes we are accused that we don't use the word enough, that we depend in books. So many out there like to say it, but we like to show this morning that the word of God is not short when it comes to advising us on how we should take care of this wonderful machine that he made. Amen. We read how Paul himself gave the admonition, how he gave the example when he told us, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself shall be cast away. So we must subject our bodies to the will of God and not to our own will, and take care of our bodies as he has instructed us to do in his word. Let us continue even deeper into the word. Proverbs chapter 23 verses 19 through 21, the wise man tells us, hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. Be not among the winebibbers, among righteous eaters of flesh. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and the drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. So let us find the advice of the wise man Solomon when he tells us not to be like the winebibbers, not to be like the righteous eaters of flesh, but to follow the counsel that the Lord has given us when it comes to diet and health. And then we have the example of Daniel and his three friends. We read in Daniel, the first chapter, verses 8 through 15. We'll read quickly. We know the story, but I want to share with our friends that are watching online, so they may also be aware of the advantages of a diet-based diet. We were created not to eat flesh, as we read in the Bible. We could do a deeper study on that another time. But we were not made wonderfully to eat flesh. We were made to have a plant-based diet, a vegan diet. And we see in this example as we read, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel in favor and in tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which out of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Then Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his friends. Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, he said, 10 days, just 10 days, and let them give us pulse and to eat. We know the pulse is plant-based. No meat, just pulse to eat and water to drink. And let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat. And thou seest, deal with thy servant. So he consented to them this matter, and proved them 10 days. Finally, verse 15. And at the end of the 10 days, their countenance appeared what? Fairer and fatter than the flesh, than all the children which they eat the portion of the king's meat and drank of his wine. So there we have a perfect example how, if we are faithful to the Lord and following his commandments when it comes to the law of health, the benefits that we shall reap as a result. And those who are believers in the spirit of prophecy, we have no shortage of advice in the spirit of prophecy when it comes to the matter. In Testimonies to the Church, Volume 3, pages 162, 163, or in Counsels on Diet and Health, page 69, we read why it is so important to follow the health message. We read how significant the health message is to God's people. For we know the great importance of the evangel's message, this last message of love that God gave to the world in these last days. But right along with it goes the health message. We read when she wrote in December 10, 1971, I was again shown that the health reform is one branch of the great work which is to fit a people for the coming of the Lord. So if we are waiting for the Lord, we are to be fit. And he's trying to make us fit in preparation for his coming. It is closely connected with the third angel's message, as the hand is with the body. So as the hand is with the body, so is the health message connected to the three angels' message. The law of the 10 Commandments has been lightly regarded by men, but the Lord will not come to punish the transgressors of the law without first sending them a message of warning. The third angel proclaims that message. Have men ever been obedient to the law of the 10 Commandments, carrying out in their lives the principles and those precepts, the curse of disease now flooding the world will not be. So while we've been faithful in the 10 Commandments alone, the diseases of the flesh will have not come upon us. But because we failed to follow the law of God, because we failed to follow his commandments, and we are rebellious, we have to suffer the diseases of this world. But if we are faithful, he shall cleanse us from all illnesses and diseases. Continuing, Counsel of Diet and Health, page 17. The Creator of man has arranged the living machinery of our body. Again, the Creator of man has arranged the living machinery of our bodies. Every function is wonderfully and wisely made. It wasn't just put together without any plans, without any organization. Even the all-knowing God, when he created us, He uses wisdom, his knowledge. As they said, every function, even the smallest function of our body is wonderfully made and wisely made. And God pledged himself to keep this human machinery in healthful action, or if the human agent will obey his laws and cooperate with God. So it is his promise that he will keep it running perfectly if we follow his commandments, if we follow what he's asking of us to do and how to take care of us. And he did not leave us blind when it comes to the health message, how we should take care of us. He gave us ample information, both in the Bible and in the spirit of prophecy. Every law governing the human machinery is to be considered just as truly divine in origin, in character. Remember that perfect character that we must have achieved before we go to heaven. And in importance as the Word of God. Every careless, inattentive action, any abuse put upon the Lord's wonderful mechanism by disregarding his specified laws in the human habitation is a violation of God's law. So it is not just breaking the 10 commandments of the moral law. We are also sinning when we do not follow his law of health. We may behold and admire the work of God in the natural world, but the human habitation is the most wonderful. So we may consider the wonderful things God has made when we go to these nature parks, we go to the zoo, and we go to this aquarium and we see his wonderful creation, all those colorful fish that we see. We consider the dolphin, the whale, all these marvelous beasts that are just as some of these were just as big as this room we're in. When we consider the lion, we're like, surprised, and we're so eager when we go to the zoo. We want to see the lions, we want to see the tigers, we want to see the panthers, and we're mesmerized by these wonderful creatures that the Lord has made, and these birds with such beautiful colors that it's amazing to look upon. More than that, we are the most wonderful creation he made. And what are we doing to it? We are destroying it. Council's Diet, page 16, continuing. A failure to care for the living machinery is an insult to the Creator. So as we do not take care of ourselves, not only are we violating his law, but it's an insult unto him when we violate and do not take care of this wonderful creation that he has made. There are divinely appointed rules which, if observed, will keep the human beings from disease and premature death. So he has told us how to take care of this wonderful machine so that we may live a full, healthy life. But instead, we want to do our own will. We want to meet our own desires. We follow after our own lust and violate God's precepts. And as a result, we have to suffer the diseases that we suffer. Review and Herald, May 8, 1883. One reason why we do not enjoy more of the blessing of the Lord is we do not heed the light which he has been pleased to give us in regard to the laws of life and health. So we lack many blessings. We miss out on many blessings for not following his attributes when it comes to health. Page 17, Council of Diet and Health. God is truly the author of the physical laws, as he is the author of the moral law. So not only is he the author of the moral law, he is also the author of the physical law and how our physical bodies work. His law is written with his own finger upon every nerve. Just as his finger wrote the law on the stones for eternity, his law is written with his own finger upon every nerve, every muscle, every faculty which has been entrusted to men. So we are not our own. As the disciples said, we were only entrusted with this body. It doesn't belong to us, for it is a temple of the Holy Spirit. But we take it upon ourselves to not do God's bidding and destroy it. And we know that we have the 8 health laws. That if we follow these simple 8 health laws, we shall live a healthy life. But so many times we decide maybe to do 4 or 5, even 7 of them. But we fail to follow just even one. Just as we break one of the 10 commandments of the moral law, we suffer the consequences. Likewise with the 8 health laws, if we just violate just one of them, we'll suffer the consequences. Just to review the 8 health laws, we got nutrition, what we eat, what we consume, but it doesn't stop there. We have to exercise this machine. He gave us the energy. He made us wonderfully so that we could exercise, we could move, we could work, we could do whatever we need to do unto his glory. We must drink water. In creation, he made ample amount of water, so there's no lack of water. We must drink water. We must get sunshine. We're not going to worship the sun, but we must receive its benefits. And we'll talk about the benefits of sunshine at the end when we get to God's remedies. Amen. Temperance. Something might be good for us. So vegetables, fruits may be good for us. But everything must be practiced in temperance. We must not overeat. Amen. We must not indulge in certain things. Amen. Everything in temperance. Salt is good. Oftentimes we want to cut it out because of our high blood pressure. But we need salt. We need sodium to function. But again, in temperance. We need fresh air. We need to get out of the confines of 4 walls and go out in the open, go out in the woods, in the forest, in the parks, to the ocean, and get fresh air. We must get ample rest, sleep. It is advised that we get at least 8 hours of sleep. And as rightfully said in the Spirit prophecy, 1 hour before the hour of midnight counts as 2. So we must practice getting to bed in time in order to get a proper rest and get a full amount of rest that we probably need. Again, we could follow all the other 8 health laws. But if our body's not getting enough rest, the body will suffer. We could exercise all we want, but the body needs to rest as well. And the Lord was all-knowing when he gave us the 7th day, not to rest physically, but that's a different kind of rest. And that'll be another study another time. Amen. So not only in spiritual matters, he gave us a day of rest, but also in our physical being, he calls us to rest. And lastly, and most important of all, we could take all the vitamins in the world. We could take all the minerals that are helpful for us. We could follow all the natural remedies we could follow. But if we don't trust in the Lord, none of those other 7 health laws and all the good things that we could consume for our health will have any significance. Amen. It'll be for waste. It'll be for naught. The most important thing, we must trust in the Lord. And then finally, I know that many, even Seventh-day Adventists, don't understand, but perhaps I will direct them to a deeper study of the sanctuary in order to get a further understanding when it comes to eating of flesh and flesh meats and so forth. And there's one thing that if we are truly preparing for the second coming of the Lord, as we read earlier, there's one thing that we must be doing or have done already at this time. For the time is close and we are not to delay. We must be prepared today as if it's coming today. And we read in Child Guidance, page 383. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away with. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. We should ever keep this end in view and endeavor to work steadily towards it. It cannot think that in the practice of flesh eating, we are in harmony with the light which God has been pleased to give us. So if we are serious about the coming of the Lord, if we are serious to go home, we are to cease from eating all flesh. We know that if we read and go back in biblical history, we go back to the book of Genesis and the time of Moses and those periods in the time of the judges, God allowed for a certain amount of time for men to eat flesh. And it wasn't truly his will to allow them to eat flesh. It was because of their murmuring that he allowed them to eat flesh. And we see the end result of them eating flesh after they started to consume flesh. We see the end result when they left Egypt, how they were remembering the wilderness that they want to go back to Egypt to eat meat and the stuff that they were eating in Egypt while they were in slavery. But now that they were free, we are a stubborn creation. We are wonderfully made, but we have become through sin a stubborn creation and lust for those things that are not for our own good. But if we are truly connected to God and we are truly seeking to perfect our character as the character of Christ, we must follow this precept that the Lord has given us, this advice that he has given us through his prophetess. Especially at this time, we are to cease, as she says, as he stated, from all flesh eating. We are to go back to the original creation that the Lord has made as we prepare to be transformed once we reach our home. And finally, one more statement before we move on into the presentation this morning. As to show that it's not only a physical matter, but more importantly, a spiritual matter. It's entitled in the section, When Sanctification is Impossible. If we do not follow the health message, sanctification is impossible. It says, a large proportion of the infirmities that afflict the human family are the result of their own wrong habits. Because of their willing ignorance or of their disregard of the light which God has given in his relation to the laws of their being. It is not possible for us to glorify while living in violation of the laws of life. The heart cannot possibly maintain consecration to God while lustful appetite is indulged. A diseased body and disordered intellect because of continual indulgence in hurtful lust makes sanctification of the body and spirit impossible. The apostle understood the importance of the health condition of the body for the successful perfection of Christian character. As we read earlier, he says, I keep under my body and bring it under subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself be a castaway. He mentions the fruit of the Spirit, among which is temperance. They that are Christ have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lust. So when we follow our own affections, when we follow our own lust, we are again crucifying Christ. So here we see the importance of the health law, of the health message, of following what God has taught us about taking care of this wonderful machine he's made. For as it is stated, it is impossible to have a sanctified life if we do not follow what he has taught us to follow. With that, we're going to move into the presentation this morning. To our friends watching at home or through the internet, so far we have covered many subjects, including diabetes, hypertension, the respiratory system, how our kidneys function, our eyes, arthritis, many other subjects we have studied, digestive system and so forth. But those are all what we call internal medicine, or medicine that has to do physically with the body. Last time, a few months ago, we studied what it relates as to mental health. So not only do we have to take care of our internal organs and our internal parts and of our internal being, but we also have to take care of our minds. For oftentimes, it is through the mind that the enemy is trying to attack us. Yes, he'll lead our mind down the path to eat things that we don't want to eat to destroy ourselves. But the thought comes through the mind. So we also have to study those things that affect the mind or the character of the individual. So this morning our study is on anxiety disorders. That's why I said that as a song that was sung this morning was fitting. For we have nothing to fear, for we know that the Lord will not leave us. So let us move into the subject matter. Let us consider this subject of anxiety. And that we know that certain level of anxiety is normal. Oftentimes when we got to speak in public, we have that fear. We feel a little nervous. That's normal. Oftentimes when we're going to start a new job or we're going to go into a new place, we feel a certain level of nervousness, anxiousness. That's normal. That's not what we're talking about here. And sometimes a little bit of anxiousness or nervousness is good. It kind of keeps us focused and going in the right direction. But we're talking something much deeper than that, much worse than that. So let us continues, the general considerations for anxiety disorders. They often, most time, begin in your teenage years or early 20s. But it could happen in children as well. I remember when the first year I moved to this country, I was, moved going into the, 5th grade in school. It was a joy for me to move to this country, meet some of my family members that I had never met, to experience new things I had never experienced. But a lot of the times I felt this uneasiness. As a 10-year-old child, I did not understand what that uneasiness was. But now I know there was anxiety, starting a new school, being in a new place, a whole different format of education. And now, while I wasn't living in the island, Puerto Rico, I would walk from my home to the school and come back. Now I have to go to a bus stop, take a bus, which took me to the other side of town, and go to this school where it was mostly people speaking another language that I did not quite understand yet, and getting, accustomed and acclimated to that new situation. So there was always a certain level of anxiousness. I didn't know what it was, but that's what it was. But when it comes to a disease or physical condition where it becomes more serious, it usually starts in the teenage years or early 20s. And it's more profound in women. It is said that the ratio is 2 to 1, 2 females to 1. So 2/3 of the population that suffer diseases of anxiety are females. And some of them, it says it has waxing and waning course over lifetime. So it's kind of like a roller coaster, up and down. A lot of times it's not steady across the board. Sometimes the individual might be okay, they might be comfortable, functioning properly, and other times that level of anxiousness might increase for a certain number of time. And then they might get better. So it's like an up and down course, like a roller coaster. It's not steady. And a lot of times it's similar to major depression or chronic diseases such as diabetes, in functional impairment, and decreased quality of life. Just like those who suffer from blood pressure or diabetes, and the quality of life is affected, and the quality of life is controlled where they can't do certain things. Same thing in this situation. Even though it might not be something that's affecting directly your organs, but it's affecting your mind, and it's crippling your mind, and it's crippling your actions, and how you behave, and how you interact with others, how you deal with others. So it's kind of crippling that individual from being able to fulfill all that they need to fulfill, to be a healthy member of society. And we also say society, but also within the church. We might consider our brethren, and oftentimes we might think everybody's okay, but we never know when somebody within ourselves could be suffering from these conditions. So we must educate ourselves to understand if we ever come across one of our brethren who's going through the situations where they're suffering of these diseases, we could help them. And there's normal versus pathologic anxiety. Normal anxiety, like I said, is adaptive. It's like, like I was saying earlier, might be a situation where you're experiencing something new for the first time and you feel a certain nervousness, certain anxiety. That's normal. It is an inborn response to a threat or the absence of people or objects that signify safety. So oftentimes, if we are taking away from our comfort level, we are taking away from our family members or our friends, people that we feel comfortable with, our circle of comfort, then we might feel a certain level of anxiety. And that's normal. But when we're talking about pathologic anxiety, is that is excessive and impairs function. So this is what we want to focus on. Pathologic anxiety, where it's to the level where it's not natural and where it's not allowing that individual to function as they should function in their everyday lives. And then we have to split into primary versus secondary. So primary might be those diseases of anxiety that are primarily related to, directly due to anxiety. And then there might be secondary where something else is causing the anxiety. So you got primary, which the main issue and the only issue is anxiety. And then secondary, where something else is affecting anxiety, might be substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, where that person, has an addiction, and if they do not get to satisfy that craving for, and satisfy that addiction, you see that anxiety level go up. And, you see the jittery, They're like walking back and forward. There's like a certain level of nervousness. They can't stay still. That's a secondary reaction of anxiety due because they're not getting to satisfy that addiction that they have. It might also be a medical condition that's leading to the anxiety. It might be also a psychiatric or mental situation that is making them anxious. Or it might be, psychosocial stressors, adjusting to a new environment. And here are the more specific anxiety disorders. We got specific phobia, which is the fear of certain things. We'll go into those quickly. Social anxiety disorder, or what is called for short SAD. Panic disorder, or we're going to just call it PD. Agoraphobia, generalized anxiety disorder due to a general medical condition, or substance-induced anxiety disorder. So specific phobias. You know that certain individuals have a fear of certain things. Yeah, we have a picture of a snake up there. Everybody, has somewhat of a fear of snakes, but other individuals are completely terrified. If they come close to a snake, they might have such a strong reaction that it might even scare those around them, the way they react. Then there are those that have a fear of medical treatment, needles, or IVs, and such things, where, as they say, they will just overreact and try to run away or try to draw things or push things out of the way or just an excessive reaction. There might be those who are afraid to get in an elevator, just like some are afraid to get on escalators and certain mechanical modes of transportation. There are those who have a fear of height. If you bring them to a certain situation, a certain level of height, that physiological reaction will start happening, heavy, the heavy breathing, that kind of want to step back and, just kind of get pale and, which is to some people, it might be somewhat normal. We weren't created just to float out there in height, but again, it's the excessiveness of it. And there are those who, believe it or not, have a fear of clowns. I know some individuals that do have a fear of clowns. And, I remember I have a specific friend, and whenever he sees a clown, or I remember one time, his girlfriend at the time showed him a picture of a clown, and he just ran out of there. And then, they had a big talk after, to fix the situation. But some people really have a deep fear of simple things that we might not even realize. So the specific phobia is marked by or is persistent for 6 months or more. So, it has to be a persistent thing or fear that exists for at least 6 months or more. It is excessive and unreasonable, cued by the presence of anticipation for specific object or situation. So again, it's that excessiveness. It's unreasonable, the reaction. It's okay to have some fear, like I said earlier, of a snake. But when it's excessive and you're overreacting, where it's causing a problem to all those individuals around, or it might be cause a scene, or it might be just something that, like I said, people around you are looking shocked what's going on, then we know that the person has a phobia to that object. Anxiety must be out of proportion to the actual danger of situation. Most conditions of anxiety, always the level of anxiety is going to be out of proportion, or it's going to be exaggerated to the level of what is the actual threat is. So the threat might not be so bad, but the reaction is excessive. And then we're going to see that that's going to be pretty much across the board for all anxiety diseases. It interferes significantly with a person's routine of function. Again, that's going to be across the board with all diseases dealing with anxiety. And when it comes to specific phobia, it affects about 15% of the population, happens early in life. Again, the ratio is 2 females to 1 male. And the main treatment is to desensitize that individual to that fear. So oftentimes, they'll give therapy to that individual. They might bring them to the situation that creates that fear. If they, for example, if they're afraid of snakes, they might have them come near snakes and just kind of slowly, baby steps, just kind of get closer to that snake, or first show them a picture of a snake, and then maybe, from a distance show them a real snake, and then with time get a little closer to that snake. So eventually they're trying to synthesize that individual of that fear. And then we got social anxiety disorder. Oftentimes we see some people that we like to call them that they're socially awkward. In some cases, it doesn't have to do nothing with anxiety, but many times it has to do with anxiety where, they're to themselves in the corner, they're loners, they don't want to interact. And it's not because it's something that they're doing in purpose or something within their control. They have what they call social anxiety disorder, where they have a fear to interact with others. They have that fear that something might not be quite right, and the individuals around them might make fun of them perhaps, or they might talk about them, whatever situation is. And again, it's an exaggerated reaction to the actual threat or the actual situation that's going on. It says, marked fear of one or more social or performance situation in which the person is exposed to the possible scrutiny of others. Again, they have that fear that they're being scrutinized by those around them, that they're being studied and ridiculed by those around them. Its exposure to the fear situation almost invariably provokes anxiety. Anxiety lasts more than 6 months. Again, the anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the situation. The fear situation is avoided and endured with distress. So either they completely get away from the situation and do not socialize at all and keep to themselves, or if they do come around other individuals and they're socializing or in the presence of others, they might be there, you might look at them, but internally they're going through great distress. They have that great fear. They can, they're overextending themselves. And again, 7% of the population suffer from, social anxiety. Again, it begins at, in the teenage years. Again, more common in women. Causes significant disability. So oftentimes, since they're not socializing, they're not, meeting with other people, they cannot function properly. So let's say for somebody, for example, who has that fear, they might not function properly at work. Or they might have to find a job where they basically work by themselves because they cannot work in a group setting, or they cannot interact with others because they have that social anxiety where they feel that they're being studied or scrutinized or ridiculed or whatever it may be. So they stay apart. So that it's going to affect their level of functioning in work and society overall. And it could also lead to a deeper depression. It could also increase depressive disorders. So not only are they loners and kind of remaining to themselves, they're in danger of also becoming depressed and leading a whole different route, which is more dangerous even then. And then the way that it's treated, social skills training, behavior therapy, cognitive therapy. So they help them understand and see things in a different way, educate them that that fear that they have, that threat that they feel that they're getting is not a real threat, that they should not fear that threat, that is the reaction perhaps a little more exaggerated than it should be. And then always, like always, they're going to try to give you medications. When you go to Western, especially Western medical treatment, everything's going to be drugs. So they're going to give you some of these. The most common is benzo, and it's a type of medication. And the more common that we see is Xanax. You often see how Xanax is always given often, even in the hospital. You have a lot of anxious patients, and they can't stay still, and they just on and on and on, and they're calling you every 30 seconds with that this is wrong or that's wrong and this wrong. So what the doctor's gonna do, tell the doctor this, and this person's gonna have a fear. Can you talk to them, whatever? The doctor, he said, okay, just give them Xanax, and that's what the doctor's gonna order because they feel they're just so anxious that they need something to calm them down. And then the other thing is what they call gabapentin. Gabapentin basically is a medication that works on the nerves. So it just kind of controls the nerves and it kind of relaxes the nerves. So that person could be more relaxed and controlled. But again, these are drugs. And we're not going to promote drugs here. This is just for a matter of education. What you're going to see if you go to the doctor and you're suffering from this condition, what they're going to try to give you. Then you have panic disorders. We've always seen that little picture of somebody blowing air into a paper bag. They have that panic reaction. A certain situation might lead them to panic and overreact about a certain situation. It says, when it comes to panic disorders, recurrent unexpected panic attacks for 1 month period or more. So it has to be at least 1 month that this person is suffering from panic attacks. It's this persistent worry about having additional attacks. So not only are they having the attacks, but they're also concerned that they're going to have another attack. So their mind is preoccupied all the time about the next attack. See how the enemy works? How Satan trying to control and damage God's creation with this poor individual who God created perfectly. Now the enemy is trying to control their mind and putting these thoughts in their mind, putting these fears in their mind. Well, we should not have any fears, for we know that God is with us and his angels are with us. So that the enemy, that's the reverse, the opposite, and puts fear in these individuals. So now it's only the individual not afraid, but they're constantly afraid that they're going to have another a panic attack and another panic attack. So what quality of life is that? Not a very good one. So when we ever encounter an individual like this, they need a lot of love and a lot of patience from our part. We need to help them. We need to pray with them. We need to comfort them. We need to reassure them that everything's going to be okay. So we need to work with those. Like I said, we never know, but there might be those among us, or there might be those who might come and hear the message and accept the Lord, but they're suffering from this condition. So we must be prepared on how to help our brethren. And then there's significant change in behavior because of the attacks. It says a panic attack is a discrete period of intense fear in which 4 of the following symptoms abruptly develop and peak within 10 minutes. So if you see any of these conditions, the person might be having a panic attack. Again, there's the racing heart rate, the palpitation, the heart is racing. They might be sweating. The person start profusely sweating. It might not be in a condition where they need to be sweating, but they just out of the fear, you see them sweating. There's trembling and shaking, obviously, but that's all natural. If we encounter a situation that's fearful to us, there might be some shaking, but if there's excessive shakiness, then we know something's not quite right. There might be shortness of breath. They're like breathing deeply and fast. They're like feeling like they're choking, like something, the world's crossing in, like something is crushing them. Chest pain or discomfort, nausea, chills or heat sensations. Paresthesia. Paresthesia is basically freezing, like they're frozen. Feeling dizzy or faint. Derealization or depersonalization. They're not really in reality. They're like go somewhere else. Fear of losing control or going crazy. Fear of dying. Like the world is ending. It's doom and gloom. Everything is crushing down on them. So those are all the reactions that we see with somebody that's having a panic attack. And most times you just got to help them just catch their breath, get them to relax, calm them down, maybe sit them somewhere, just probably air them a little bit and just get them to relax and just to catch their breath. That's why oftentimes, you see them with a paper bag so they could get a little, air coming back. And then we only see this on about 2 or 3% of the population, and it begins again early teen years or early 20s. And this one is found more prominent again. Before we saw that most of this were 2 to 1 when it comes to females and males. In this situation, it's 3 to 1. So about 75% of those who suffer panic attacks are going to be females. And about half of those, they have a lifetime major depression. So not only, it's because of panic attack or situation, it's because they already have another condition that's affecting them to lead them down that path, such as depression. Or they might have a history of substance abuse. So about a quarter of them, or 25% of them, have been abusing drugs. So that's why they're suffering from this type of anxiety. And then what leads to it? It could be drugs, it could be alcohol. It could also sometimes be genetic. It could be, something that they learn through society, certain fears that society created in them. It could be a conditioned fear, something that was purposely done to them, or psychosocial stressors. And treatment, again, is education, educate them about the situation. Again, reassurance. And here comes more specifically to the health message, elimination of caffeine. The world always wants to drink coffee, especially, in the nursing world, you see all these nurses that want to come in early in the morning and they can't function until they have their cup of coffee, or they're working at night, they need to have their cup of coffee to stay awake, and they need their caffeine and this and that, and then some of them try to convince you that caffeine is good, and then you have to tell them, keep drinking coffee and see the effect it's going to have on your nerves. And when you feel jittery and all that, where is it coming from? It's coming from caffeine. There's alcohol, drugs, or over-the-counter stimulants. So it might be stuff that they buy over-the-counter at the pharmacy, and alcohol and drugs and caffeine. And so if you're using any of those, we must cut those out. Caffeine, alcohol, drugs, and many over-the-counter products that we buy. It might be behavioral therapy, again, some kind of therapy to help them through the situation, how to deal with the situation, how to react when if they feel that the situation is coming on, how to best handle it, and how to overcome it. And again, medications and drugs. Some of the same drugs, benzos, gabapentin, and so forth. And the next one is what we call agoraphobia. As you see in this picture, the individual is kind of hiding, kind of looking through a small space, not going outside. So basically, agoraphobia is a marked fear or anxiety for more than 6 months about 2 or more of the following situations. They're afraid to use public transportation. They're afraid of being in open spaces. So basically, with these individuals, they're what we call shut-ins. They don't want to go outside because they're afraid of being outside. They're afraid of being in a crowd of people. If they find themselves in a crowd of people, they have an intense fear and intense anxiety. They're afraid to use public transportation because oftentimes when you get on the bus, when you get in the subway system, is it going to be empty? No, a lot of times it's full, it's packed. So they have that fear of being around a large number of people. They're, again, standing in line or being in a crowd, being outside of the home alone. So in the other end, they're afraid to be alone outside. So they just have a fear of going outside into the crowd or being by themselves outside. Maybe if they have somebody that they feel comfortable with, it wouldn't be as bad. So if they have, a certain person that brings a comfort level, they might be able to go outside and handle it a little better. But most times they're afraid to be out in the crowds. So they kind of stay in and shut themselves in. So the individual fears or avoids the situation because escape might be difficult or help might not be available. So if they find themselves in a crowd and they feel that sensation and that fear attack coming in, they feel that nobody may be able to help or nobody might be able to get them out of the situation. So because they fear that that's going to happen, they don't go out. They stay in. And so anxiety is out of proportion, again, to the actual threat. And then the situation are avoided or endured with great anxiety. And again, same situation. Begins in the early teenage years. Again, females 2 to 1 and found in females to males. Very similar to all the rest and the other ones. And then we call general anxiety disorder. So we have more specific ones that we covered, and then you have more general ones that are more broad. So in general anxiety disorder, excessive worry more days than not for at least 6 months about a number of events they find difficult to control the worry. So they constantly worry about a certain event that's coming or certain situations they got to manage or certain things that are coming down the line. And so they're looking at their calendar and they just feel anxious. They feel overwhelmed. So that fear and that anxiety kicks in because they feel like they cannot control it, like it's above them. And then you have 3 or more of the following symptoms: restlessness, feeling on edge, easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating, irritable, muscle tension, sleep disturbance, because they're constantly worrying about the events that are coming. And, I have to plan for this. It has to be perfect. I got to go here and get this. Everything must be, perfectly as they think it should be. So they're constantly worrying and overstressing themselves over the situation. And as a result, it causes significant distress and impairment. And we see it in about 4 to 7% of the population, and this one begins a little later, maybe about 30 years of age and on. And again, same ratio, 2 females to 1 male. And the treatment, again, they're going to want to give you medications or behavioral therapy. Again, every disease that we have studied, everything presentation we have done, we'll always see how in the medical world out there, they're always going to give you some kind of drugs. But Thank be to God that He has given us natural remedies and ways how we could remedy the situation without depending on all these drugs. And finally, post-traumatic stress disorder. Oftentimes, this is those individuals that have kind of faced some kind of traumatic situation. Most times we see it with soldiers coming back from war, where they're seeing horrible things or they're being in horrible situations, where they're seeing an endless number of deaths, or they're seeing loved ones and friends die in battle. So they come, suffering from that traumatic event. So it's called post-traumatic stress disorder. Post meaning after the fact. So they're suffering after they witness a certain situation. Or it could be somebody that suffered a horrific accident. Or it could be somebody that went through a natural disaster, an earthquake, a hurricane, a terrible storm, a wildfire, something horrific, a natural, that has to do with nature. So it could be among those things. And when it comes to soldiers, not only soldiers, but you could also see it with even police officers sometimes, or fire rescue, individuals that might come into horrific scenes. And to explain a little more, it's exposure to actual or threatened death, series of physical, intimate violence in one or more of the following ways. We know that the word intimate, I didn't want to put the other word there, but we could deduct what the word intimate there is supposed to be. It says direct experiencing of traumatic event, witness in person the event as it occurred to others. So it might not have happened to them, but they might have seen a horrific scene where they might have seen an accident and something happened horrible to another person, or soldiers where, they came back from war, they didn't die, but they witnessed horrific things. Learning that the traumatic events occurred to a person close to them. So again, it might not happen to them physically, but it might have happened to a loved one, and that also causes, stress or anxiety on that individual. So experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to adverse details of trauma. Again, this is soldiers. They're constantly being exposed to constant extreme exposure or adversive details of trauma. So they're constantly seeing battle, constantly seeing death. So they're seeing that over and over and over again. Explosions, all this loud noise, so they're just exposed, to that. So they're seeing it over and over and over. So as a result, it's going to affect the individual. We were not made to see those kind of things. Death and all those horrific things, we know that it's of the enemy, not of God. So when God created us, He did not create us to go and witness these horrible things. Again, presence of one or more intrusive symptoms after the event. So some of the stuff that we might see with these individuals is recurrent involuntary and intrusive memories of the event. So that memory is coming back. That scene is replaying in their minds over and over and over. Recurrent trauma-related nightmares. So oftentimes they're constantly having nightmares and waking up in the middle of the night screaming and shaking. And it's because that thought, that memory has not left their mind. It's there. It's permanently there. So oftentimes, either whether awake or sleeping, they react to it when that memory comes back. Intense physiologic distress, acute exposure. So oftentimes we see soldiers, for example, again, that's the more common one we see with this kind of condition. They might be coming back, and they might be driving down the road, and they say, we don't hear that anymore, but some time ago we used to hear cars backfire more often than we do now. So they might hear a car backfire, and it sounds like a gunshot going off. Or they might hear just fireworks, and that might start feeling them. It brings them back to the situation where they were in battle, and they hear all these gunshots and all these explosions. So to them, it's something's happening, so they might react to it in a negative way. Marked physiological reactivity to acute exposure, again, that we just talked about. And the other extreme, there might be those who might try to avoid the distressing memory, thoughts or feeling of the event. So there might be those who might oppress those memories. They might oppress those feelings. Like we said, they'll bottle up all those situations, but we know that's something that people oppress and bottled up. At some point, you can only hold it back so much before that individual, as we say, explodes. And all that resurfaces, and it could be a horrible situation. So they might try to put it in the back burner, as I said, forget about it and oppress it, but eventually it's going to come back to them. Or they might avoid certain situations or places or events that might remind them of the situation or might bring certain memories back. So, for example, a lot of times we have these 4th of July celebrations where there's a lot of fireworks going on and so forth. So somebody who might be suffering from PTSD from battle, they might avoid those situations because hearing those fireworks going off and exploding, those shells exploding, it might bring them back to that situation. They might be overreacting. Social support, pre-existing psychiatric disorder. So if they have a pre-existing mental disorder, it's going to be worse. If they don't have any social support, they're by themselves going through this situation, it's going to be worse. And if they're constantly exposed to trauma, it's going to be worse. So that's why I was saying that a lot of the individuals, they need a lot of support from others. They need a lot of help, reassurance from others. So that's why, if we, again, I can't stress it enough. If we get somebody within ourselves or somebody coming into a visitor and they're suffering through these situations, we must be available and ready to help those individuals. We should know through the love of Christ how to react and how to treat others, if we follow the example of Christ and dealing with these individuals, reassuring them, giving them hope, giving them faith, giving them assurance that the Lord has not forsaken them, that the Lord is there to help them. And some of the things that we might see with those individuals that are suffering through of this disease, of this type of anxiety, PTSD, is depression. Oftentimes they're depressed because they're constantly doing battle with those memories and those horrific scenes that they saw. They might develop other anxiety disorder where it might, like the ones that stay inside locked in, they might not want to go out because they don't want to experience or see any situation that might bring them back to that original situation. Or they might, as the picture shows, depend on substance abuse. They might start drinking, start using drugs just to kind of suppress those memories and suppress those feelings. But what we know when we start using drugs and those that use alcohol, that's a fixed situation? No. Oftentimes, when people are depressed and want to forget something, they drink. But they don't realize that alcohol is a depressant, so it's just leading you to a deeper depression. And not only that, but we know the effect of alcohol and other drugs in our bodies besides this situation. And then they have these associative disorders where they block everything off. They don't want to remember anything. They just move on and disassociate from the situation altogether. In treatment, oftentimes, a lot of like hospitals, military, police department, fire stations, they have what they call debriefing sessions where, after they go through a certain event or certain situation that was very tough and difficult, they have those situations where they sit and talk about it. Oftentimes they think it's going to help, but studies have shown that it doesn't really help. It might help right at the moment, but when the individual leaves and goes home, those memories are still there. Just because, it's good to talk things over and communicate, but the memories are not going to go away. They're still going to be there. So again, with the help of this individual, they're going to have behavioral therapy or exposure. So again, they're going to have therapy or expose them to the situation slowly, just to kind of get them acclimated to overcome that fear, to overcome that reaction, to overcome that anxiety. They might also have group therapy, where, often here we hear about the Alcoholics Anonymous and all these group therapies where people with similar diseases or similar conditions come together and talk it out, and they have a support group and they help each other out. Same thing in this situation where they might have a group of veterans or a group of people that have some suffering of this condition, where they could interact, they could talk, and they have people from outside to support them and kind of move on through it and how to overcome it. And again, if you go to the medical world, they're going to give you drugs, but we're not going to do drugs. And then finally, a list of questions that we got to ask ourselves, or at least kind of know these questions, and so we could probably see, we could see somebody else that might be suffering of something, and we might be able to discern better if they're going through any of these conditions. So we have to ask ourselves, have we ever experienced a panic attack? Or do you consider yourself a worrier? Are you constantly worrying, and all you do is worry all the time? Have you ever had anything happen that still haunts you? One of those memories, again, dealing with PTSD. Do you get thoughts stuck in your head that really bother you or need things to do over and over? I don't know, this is talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. We didn't talk about it today because two presentations ago we talked about OCD. Those individuals that feel like they need to repeat a same action over and over, like washing their hands, locking the door, and so forth. So that's one that's also fits under the anxiety disorder, but also we covered it on the mental health, which it also fits in that situation. So when you are in a situation where people can observe you, do you feel nervous or worried that they will judge you? So all these questions that we don't necessarily need to maybe ask ourselves, but we need to be aware to see if perhaps we kind of notice some of these symptoms in those that might be around us, and that they might need some help, and they might need our encouragement. So we need to be aware of those situations to help others. Now, we're done with that section. Now we want to move into God's remedies. We saw how in every condition at the end, treatment, we saw drugs. I mean, we saw certain therapy and support, but at the bottom it always says medications and all these drugs. So now we want to review some natural remedies that we could use that will help us with anxiety. Again, God not only created us perfectly, but He created nature around us. And He put many things out in nature that were designed to help us. For He knew if we fell into sin that we were going to suffer. And there was going to be an end result of sin, and that is diseases and illness. So He gave us many things that we could use to help our condition without depending on drugs. Now we know chamomile, often people use it to help them sleep because we know it has a relaxing attribute to it. It says it contains two chemicals that promote relaxation, apigenin and luteolin. A study at the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center found that patients with generalized anxiety disorder who took chamomile supplements for 8 weeks had a significant decrease in anxiety symptoms compared to patients who were given a placebo. So chamomile has a positive effect on anxiety, on generalized anxiety disorder. So I know oftentimes we see it in tablets or capsules. Oftentimes some people drink it in a tea form. So there's several ways that you could take chamomile. Omega-3 fatty acids are also another natural remedy that we could use to help with anxiety. It says there is some evidence that omega-3 fatty acids may ease symptoms of anxiety disorder and lift your mood by lowering levels of stress chemicals such as adrenaline and cortisol in the body. Walnuts and flax seeds are all great sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Oftentimes people think that they gotta take fish oil or certain meats or certain flesh derivative to get omega-3 fatty acids, but no. You could get it from flax seeds, you could get it from walnuts. Lavender, we know that lavender is also a relaxer. It also calms you down. So that's another option that we have to use. It says, try putting a few drops of lavender essential oil in your pillow or in your bath. Or add a few drops to a cup of boiling water and inhale for quick calming down medication or relief. You can even dab a few drops right on your skin. It's one of the few essential oils that can be applied directly. The scent of vanilla has also shown to alleviate symptoms of anxiety. So not only lavender, but also vanilla. L-leucine. L-leucine is an amino acid and one of the building blocks of your brain's chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Studies have shown that people taking L-leucine supplements have reduced symptoms of anxiety and reduced levels of stress and hormones. L-leucine is commonly found in beans and also sold as oral supplements. So pretty much any kind of beans will have L-leucine, or you can also buy supplements. And again, getting out in nature. You know that when we go out every year, and around winter time, we want to get out in the woods. When we go camping, we want to get out in nature, go out in the parks, and enjoy that relaxing atmosphere in nature. Going or walking the woods where it's quiet, where it's relaxing, where you can get your minds, gets away from all the stress of everyday life, work, and all the city life, we leave all that behind and just focus on God's creation and just listen to the wind rushing through the trees, listen to the bird, and even look at upon some of the animals that we see out there, and our minds distracted, and we almost go into a peaceful, quiet place. It says, try to get outside natural sunlight for 15 minutes a day. It says this is the best way to naturally increase your vitamin D levels. Talking about the sunlight. And we talked about one of the 8 health laws, sunshine. This is where it applies. It says a short 15-minute break will not only take your mind off stress, but also let you reap the benefits of outdoor activity. And the greener, the better. It says one Japanese study found that people who walked through the forest for 20 minutes had lower stress hormone levels after their walk than those who took comparable walk in an urban area. So if you walk out in the woods rather than walking in the city, it's much more effective than walking in the city. But if you're stuck in an urban area, you could look for a park or a quiet tree-lined street to take a stroll. So, oftentimes, people don't have the luxury or a way of getting out into nature or traveling out of the city. But, sometimes we find parks in the city, or we find, a certain street that has a lot of trees. So you could just walk in those areas as well if you can find, a forest near by your place of dwelling, and you could use that as an alternative. But it would be best if you could make it into nature. Also, studies show 21 minutes is all it takes for exercise to reliably reduce symptoms of anxiety. So all we need is just 21 minutes of exercise to bring our levels of anxiety down, just to kind of work those things out of the system, just to let them melt away. He says exercise will not only make you feel better about yourself, but will flood your body with feel-good endorphins. Some researchers even believe that increasing your body's heat, a natural result of exercise, may alter neural circuits controlling cognitive function and mood, including those that affect the neurotransmitter serotonin. Researchers believe this response can boost your mood, increase relaxation, and alleviate symptoms of anxiety disorder. So again, go out there, take a good 20, 25-minute walk. That's what we need to do. It doesn't have to be excessive exercise. It doesn't have to be running. It doesn't have to be lifting weights or anything like that. Just get a good brisk walk out in nature again. So you could kill, as I said, you could, kill 2 birds with one stone. You go out in the woods, get the sunlight, and also you're exercising. So it's double the benefit. Again, a soothing hot bath will always be coming, and raising your body heat may help regulate mood and anxiety. For added benefits, there is some Epsom salt. So a nice warm bath in your bathtub, if you have one, it'll go a long way. But if you add Epsom salt or even lavender or vanilla oil, it's even better. He says that magnesium sulfate in Epsom salt, has been shown to calm anxiety and lower blood pressure. You can also try, again, lavender or vanilla essential oils to your bath water to reap the benefits of these calming scents. So you could find a nice bathtub, some nice hot, warm water, not to the point where it's burning you or affecting you negatively, but just warm, hot enough to do the job, and add some Epsom salt and maybe a few drops of lavender or vanilla essential oil. It helps relax the nerves. It helps also drop your blood pressure too. And then for those, our friends out there, if you're still drinking caffeine, because I know that most of the brethren here, we don't participate in caffeine, but those who do participate of caffeine, we must cut it out. Despite what the world might tell us or what everybody might tell us, the benefits of caffeine, we know that caffeine is not good for our nerve system, and it's not good for anxiety either. If anything, caffeine will make us jittery and more anxious, and affect our nerves. There's a certain level of nervousness when we drink coffee. It might keep you awake, but it's because of those negative reactions, because your nerves are going and you're jittery, so that's why you're awake, not because it's helping you. If anything, we need to find things, as we read with the essential oils, that relaxes us, not make us more active and jittery. Since caffeine makes you jittery and anxious, be aware of other sources of caffeine besides coffee. They may be in your diet, such as soda, chocolate, tea, and some other over-the-counter medications like Excedrin and Midol. So it's not just coffee. There's also, people that drink soda, people that drink tea, and certain medications and over-the-counter medications also have caffeine And I know a lot of people oftentimes, especially college students or people that work certain jobs at night, they like to take what they used to call no-dose pills or certain pills that were made out of caffeine and to stay awake. Again, we want to stay away from all that kind of stuff. There's caffeine, alcohol, and added sugars, which all have been shown to increase anxiety. So not only caffeine, we also spoke about alcohol, but also sugars, added sugars, all have been shown to increase anxiety. It says deficiency in magnesium, vitamin B12, and zinc have been linked to symptoms of anxiety disorder. So if we have a shortage of magnesium, vitamin B12, or zinc, it might also lead to anxiety. So we take some of those supplements that also help replenish our body for what we need to reduce our levels of anxiety. So we don't have to depend on these drugs or these Xanax and all these other drugs that they want to prescribe. God gave us natural minerals and natural vitamins in order to replace what we need in our system to control anxiety. So studies link an unhappy gut with an unhappy mind. So avoid eating difficult to digest food like processed meals, food high in saturated fats, and fried foods. Also, so when our digestive system is not happy, our mind is not happy. So we suffer the consequences. So we want to, again, avoid processed foods, food high in saturated fats, and fried foods. Because we know fried foods, it takes all that oil that is being fried in. And when we're eating those fried foods, we're eating that oil. Finally, don't let yourself become so angry that your blood sugar drops, which can lead to anxiety attack. So again, when we become angry, not only our blood pressure goes up, but also our sugar levels drop. And that could lead to an anxiety attack. So let us be calm, let us be collected. We know that we have nothing to worry about. We should not be getting angry. If we have that perfect character and we follow the example of Christ and his character, we should not get to the point where our natural negative body reactions are leading us down that path. Finally, blueberries and peaches contain nutrients that relieve stress and have calming effect. So again, if you get some blueberries, some peaches, that also helps you calm your nerves. Whole grains are rich in magnesium and tryptophan. Whole grains, talking about rich in magnesium and tryptophan, an amino acid that your body converts to serotonin, which is known to calm and improve your mood. Oats, like oatmeal. Oats also increase serotonin production that are high in fiber, which help prevent blood sugar spikes and affect your mood. So not only is, fear of certain situations, not only, fear of certain animals or heights or external effects of seeing certain, tragic situation or fear of being alone in the individual. Also what we eat could have a reaction on our body, whether raising the blood pressure, lowering our sugar levels, and that could also affect our anxiety levels. So it's not just what our eyes perceive and our eyes see. It's also what we eat controls our anxiety levels or affect it in a negative way. Says avocados are great with B vitamins that can help prevent anxiety. So again, avocado is a good source for the B vitamin complex. So that's also something we could use to replenish naturally what our body needs to control our anxiety and not suffer from that. So foods that help regulate and lower the stress hormone cortisol includes foods rich in vitamin C, like oranges, omega-3 fatty acids, and magnesium-rich foods like spinach and other dark leafy greens. We don't want to indulge. It says indulge, but we don't want to indulge. Everything in moderation. I said, we shall say, eat every once in a while dark chocolate, especially dark chocolate that's vegan, that doesn't have any milk in it. The darker, the better. Which also helps lower cortisol. So we want to take this natural remedies, this vitamins, minerals, vegetables, fruits that the Lord has made to help us control these diseases. So we don't have to depend on so much on drugs. We have a healthy, balanced, vegan, plant-based diet, then we should be on our way to improving our health. And finally, I want to leave you with a few thoughts from the Bible. It's in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. We read, "Be careful for nothing, But in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So let us keep our mind in Christ. Let us keep our minds in good things that the Lord has made. Let us reflect on his life as we were admonished to do. Let us reflect, especially in those closing scenes as we prepare for translation. And let those worries melt away. Let all those concerns melt away. And again, going back to the song that was sung before the presentation, we have nothing to fear, for the Lord is with us. And finally, our closing text for every presentation, Exodus 15:26, and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, brethren, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. May the Lord bless you this morning. Let us remember the importance of the health message and everything that the Lord has left for us to practice. Let us remember, as we read at the beginning, that it is indeed a spiritual matter. For we do not live a sanctified life if we do not follow the health law as well as the moral law. Just like the moral laws, we said, if we break one commandment, we break them all. Same thing with the health law. If we break one of the health laws, we break them all. So let us strive with all our might to follow what the Lord has taught us and how the Lord has guided us and the wisdom he has given us to live a healthful life. Because again, yes, we need to take care of this wonderful machine that he made to live a healthful life. But more than that, it's a spiritual matter. For we cannot directly connect with him as we should. We cannot reflect that character perfectly if we're not following everything that he has taught us when it comes to the health message. May the Lord bless you this morning. I'm going to ask Pastor Walker, please come forward and close with prayer at this time.
It's a wonderful presentation. What do you say? To those out there who are listening online, we do hope that you were blessed with this presentation. And so we are going to close now with prayer. Let us kneel as we pray. Wonderful, loving Heavenly Father, we come before your throne in the mighty name of Jesus, our great high priest. Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for educating us in regards to the importance of eating right and keep ourselves healthy so that you can use us to carry forward your cause. We pray that you continue to bless us, be blessed for the rest of the day. Bless the food we are about to partake, Lord, and we thank you for those and that provide food. We ask that you continue to keep them strong and healthy. Hear us and bless us to the end, we pray. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
Amen.